Chester is the newest legendary brawler coming to the game, and he's also the first brawler in the Candyland trio. He's a jester that hangs around Mandy's candy shop, and he's pretty much always up to no good, particularly when it comes to pranking Mandy. Based off of some of his voice lines, he might even be in the market for selling his own pranks and gags to customers.
Surprise! Synergy is the key to victory. I've heard that somewhere. You got hurted. Oh, the poor baby.
He also carries around a jack-in-the-box that gives him all sorts of different tools to use, but he doesn't seem to have any control over what it gives them. And I guess nobody has control over the jack-in-the-box, which is exactly why the entire description of Jester is a statement to keep Star Park out of legal trouble if anyone gets their hands on it. Chester's main attack is Cap and Bells. He takes the bells from off of his cap and throws them at enemies. This attack is very unique because the number of bells that he throws changes every time he uses the attack. The first attack of the match will be 1 bell, then the next will be 2, then the next will be 3, and then the sequence repeats itself back down to 1, 2, and then 3. The sequence will also restart back to 1 bell if Chester dies at any moment, or if the round ends like in Brawl Ball or Knockout. Now if you forget how many bells Chester is about to fire, you can easily just aim and take a look at the shape of his reticle, and you'll learn very fast how many bells are fired depending on how wide it is. Next is Chester's super, which is probably the craziest in the game, because technically it's 5 different supers. Candy Popper, which is a bomb, Jawbreaker, which stuns people, Salmiakki, which is a cloud of poison smoke, Pop Rocks, which slows, and a strong mint that heals. They're all very different things, and you don't know which super you're going to get until his super is fully charged. After he's charged it up, the best way is to just look at his super, and you can actually check out the symbol on the super button. And the symbols might take a little minute for you guys to memorize, but eventually the symbols themselves are actually really good indicators of what the abilities do. The first up, Candy Popper, is basically like Dynamite's super, except it doesn't deal quite as much damage. It deals a fair amount of damage, breaks the walls in its radius, and knocks enemies back. Next is Jawbreaker, which is another projectile that is shot instead of thrown, and it stuns the target for a couple of seconds, which like any experienced player is going to tell you that that can be very deadly. Next is Salmiakki, which is salt licorice. It is a cloud of poison powder that is shot out in a similar shape to like Emz's main attack, but instead of dealing a bunch of damage at once, it poisons the target for 7 seconds. That's right. So the total damage that it deals is actually really insane, just over 3,000. Next we have Pop Rocks, which creates a large area surrounding Chester that slows enemies down and deals damage to them for every second that they remain inside the radius. It's very similar to like Spike's super. Then we have Strong Mint, which heals Chester 1,200 health every second for 3 seconds, which is a lot of HP healed, right? Once again, the super that Chester can use after charging it up is totally random every single time. So your chance of getting a certain super doesn't go up or down based off of how many times you've already used it. And like hypothetically, you could actually get the same super every single time, although like the chance of that is just incredibly rare. Chester's first gadget is a Spicy Dice. This gadget can only be activated once his super is charged, and once it's activated, it will instantly change whichever Chester's current super is to a different one at random. It has to be a different one than the one he already has, so like you don't have to worry about activating it and getting the same super again. One thing to note is that it will be a random super, and you won't be able to see which super you're going to roll into until you've already rolled. So like at that point, it might be too late. And it might be better for you to just use a super and then recharge a super sometimes than use this gadget sometimes. Now Chester's second gadget is Candy Beans. This gadget is almost as crazy as his super. He can activate this gadget at any time, and he will instantly receive some kind of stat boost for 5 seconds. It will either give some health over time, or increase his movement speed, increase his reload speed, or increase the damage that he deals for the next 5 seconds. The damage boost is 25%, and the heal is 420 health every second. And I don't know the exact increase for his movement speed or reload speed, but they're both pretty significant buffs. Just like Chester's super, you cannot pick which buff you get from the gadget, and it's totally random. You won't know until after you use it, which is kind of weird and interesting. Chester's first star power is Bell-O-Mania. While this star power is equipped, Chester's main attack will add a 4th bell to his attack sequence. So it'll go 1 bell, 2 bell, 3 bells, then 4 bells, and then return back to 1 bell. Now you're probably wondering, won't you deal just like an absurd amount of damage at close range? Well, yes, we'll get to that later though. Chester's second star power is Sneak Peek. This star power allows you to see which super you're going to charge before your super is fully charged. You pretty much just need to look at the super button and you'll see a little icon on that. And that could actually change the way that you play him a lot, depending on which super you're going to have. And knowing beforehand could be really great information to have. I don't think it's quite as good as like getting additional damage from that 4th shot, but I could be totally wrong. Now you can see how crazy Chester is. Let's see how good he does in all the Olympics events, starting with his worst test and moving way to his best. First up is the box test. Now Chester starts with 3 bells loaded so that he can quickly take out the first box with only 2 ammo. There are a few bells wasted just because the sequence of bells doesn't always match up perfectly with the group of boxes that he's trying to take out, but for the most part, each of his bells do a lot of damage and he often hits more than 1 box with the same ammo. He's able to completely get rid of all 16 boxes in 58.8 seconds, which puts him in 49th place and suggests he might not be the best at ramping up damage in solo showdown, but more on that later. Next we have the splash test, and Chester's able to hit every box with his Salmiakki super, and since it deals the most damage out of all of his supers, that's the one he uses. After destroying the first boxes, he's able to start taking them out with just 1 ammo at a time, and eventually breaks even more with each ammo. Chester finishes the splash test in 34.6 seconds, which puts him in 44th place. Next we have the reload test. Now Chester's unload speed is actually pretty fast considering how much damage he can deal with his attacks. His reload speed is definitely below average though, so he finishes this test in 22.2 seconds and ties with Griff for 44th place. Next we have the attack range test. Chester's attack significantly increases in width depending on the number of bells that he's about to shoot, but it does not increase in length at all. So no matter how many bells he shoots out at once, he reaches 8 tiles long, and that ties him with Tara, Stu, and Griff for 43rd place. Next we have the super range test, and his super range obviously varies between the 5 different supers that he has. His Jawbreaker super has the furthest range at 8 2/3 tiles, and his Candy Popper super has just barely shorter, but it obviously has a bigger radius. Chester ties with Piper, B, and Mr. P for 42nd place with the super range test. Next we have the boss test. Now brawlers are not allowed to start with a super charge in this test, and like technically I could have done this test like over and over and over again and hopefully gotten like the perfect number of supers, the right ones that deal the most absolute damage possible, but like it's just unrealistic. When you play Chester, you don't know what you're getting, so that's how I played him with this test specifically. Now his strong mid super is the only one that doesn't deal damage, so I did use his spicy dice gadget to replace it, and luckily that only came up just once. Overall, I feel pretty good with his time of 58.4 seconds, and that puts him in 37th place, which suggests he's gonna be like about average when it comes to his total damage output throughout the entire match. Next is the swarm test, and I did take multiple attempts at this test because I could easily start it out with the right super, and then all I needed was to roll the Candy Popper for his second super, so it didn't take very long. Chester's able to destroy all of the bots that aren't in his Pop Rocks range before the Pop Rocks actually destroys the rest of the bots, and Chester defeats the swarm in 6 seconds, so he gets 35th place. Next we have the race test, and I have specifically not used his Candy Beans gadget throughout this entire Olympics because it's so random and it's just unreasonable for me to have to record every single one like 15 different times just to get the perfect super and gadget combination, okay? So he technically could have gotten better in this race test, but I chose not to use it in this situation, and his movement speed is a fast movement speed, so he ties with 6 other brawlers for 33rd place, including Frank. We're done with half of the tests, and he's better than half of the brawlers in the rest of these tests. Next is the super damage test, and out of the 4 supers that deal damage, his Salmiakki one, the Salt Licorice super, deals the most damage in total, even though it does take 7 seconds for all the damage to be dealt. Jawbreaker deals 2,100 damage, Pop Rocks deals 2,400 damage, Candy Popper deals 2,820, and Salmiakki deals 3,010 damage. So Chester gets 20th place. Next is the survival test, and even though Chester cannot use his gadget to heal himself, his strongman super heals him for a total of 3,600 HP, which is almost all of his HP. He's able to buy an extra 7 seconds with that, so Chester ends up surviving for 23.7 seconds. That ties him with Gus for 20th. Next we have the area test, and with Chester's Bellamania star power equipped, one of his attacks with 4 bells is able to destroy 45 skulls. Then we have his Pop Rock super, which covers the most area out of all of them and also destroys 45 skulls, so Chester breaks 90 in total, and that puts him in 19th place. Next is the auto aim test. Once again, Chester uses his first star power to increase the width of his attack a ton, so that he's able to auto aim at Nita from as far away as possible. Only one of the bells hits, but that's enough for 7 tiles of auto aiming, which is actually pretty impressive even if it only happens 1/4 of the time. Next we have the assassin test. Even though Salmiakki deals more damage, it takes too long to deal its damage in the assassin test where you only have 3 seconds, so Chester uses Candy Popper instead. He starts with 2 bells so that he can deal as much damage as possible, and he gets a little extra damage with his second super, but his 3rd second is up before he can unload a 4th attack. He deals 13,020 damage, and that ties him with Squeak and BB for 9th place. Next is the 1 second DPS test, and he's able to fire all 3 of his shots as well as his Candy Popper super in this test, all within 1 second. The only difference between this test and the assassin test is that he doesn't doesn't have enough time to get a little extra damage from his second super. Chester deals 12,540 damage in just 1 second and gets 6th place. Next, we have the 3 attack kill test. He deals 1,080 damage with each bell. So with his first star power equipped, he can hit a target with 9 bells with 3 ammo. I wanted to mention that his Candy Beans gadget could also give him an additional 25% damage boost, which would make his 3 attacks still 12,150 damage with 3 attacks. That's crazy. That's enough to take out any brawler in the game, including Frank with his fun star power. But without it, he still deals 9,720 damage, which is very impressive. It is enough to take out every single brawler in the game except for Frank. So he ties with Colt for 4th place. Next is the supercharge test. Chester needs 6 bells in order to charge up his super, and since he can land 7 bells with just 2 ammo in the right situation, he's able to charge up his super in only half a second. That puts Chester in a 5th way tie for 2nd place overall, which suggests he will be able to charge up his super very frequently. Chester actually did pretty well at a lot of these tests, and like, even though I didn't even let him use his second gadget, but he's so random. So the question is, how strong do I think he's gonna be? Let me just start off by saying that even though there's a lot of luck involved with how Chester plays, I think he's going to be a very strong brawler because he deals so much damage, and he has that really unique aspect of him knowing what his super is when his enemies will not know what it is. Like, that's actually really cool, okay? There aren't very many brawlers that can beat him in a close range fight either, and 4 of his 5 supers are really effective at helping him catch an enemy gem carrier off guard. So I think it's fair to give him S tier for gem grab. I'm also going to give him S tier for brawl ball since it's not much of a different mode, and it actually really favors medium range aggressive brawlers, right? And that is Chester to a T. I would even say that his strongman super is even better for this game mode than it is for gem grab, and like the rest of his supers are all just so good in this game mode, like if not better. So I think he's S tier for brawl ball as well. Next we have heist, and even though Chester can deal an absolutely absurd amount of burst damage, he basically has to be point blank with the target, and like his attacks have to be like in the perfect sequence as well. And I don't think he's just quite as usable in heist. I don't think he's gonna be awful. I think you'll be able to play him. I don't think he's quite good enough for A tier, but like you could still play him, and B tier seems to make sense for him. Next we have bounty, and bounty is probably going to be Chester's worst game mode simply because his attack range is just a little bit too short to compete with the other really strong bounty brawlers. On top of that, he doesn't even have any supers that have like good range to make him strong in bounty. So I think the C is probably fair enough for bounty. But Chester absolutely does have the range that he needs for hot zone, and he absolutely has the attack width as well. Similar to brawl ball, all 5 of his supers are very good for this mode because it either keeps him inside the zone longer, or he can use it to easily push the enemies outside of the zone. He is like without like he's so good for hot zone. S tier absolutely. Next is knockout, and I don't think he's gonna be that amazing in knockout. Okay, only 2 of his supers are really good for knockout, so I don't think this is so good for him. He's definitely gonna do better on knockout maps with lots of grass where he can like get close to somebody and like burst them down, but I still think that he's gonna get outranged most of the time. Next we have solo showdown, and this is gonna be an interesting one. Chester is a little bit below average when it comes to breaking boxes, but I think all of his supers are at least decent for showdown. He could probably use a little bit more range for this mode, but I think that his fast movement speed and crazy DPS do make up for it, especially when you consider the fact that enemies are just going to want to stay away from him. They don't like the number one thing they want to avoid is getting hit by his stun. That could be the most dangerous situation, or the poison one over time. Like that one's also really dangerous. So like, I don't know, people are just going to want to stay away from him, and that makes him pretty strong because they don't know what to expect. So I think A tier is actually pretty solid for solo showdown, and I'm going to give that to him in duo showdown as well. Some of Chester's supers would probably be a little bit more useful with a teammate with him, but his attack can only hit 1 target at a time, which isn't that great for duos. That being said, I don't think that either of those are going to make a big difference for him. I think that he's still pretty solid, and A tier I think makes sense for duo showdown. Well, Chester is one of the most unique brawlers that we've ever had in the game at this point, so I want to know what your guys' opinion are of him. So let me know if you think he's going to be strong. He could be way too strong. He could be too weak, and honestly, he could be both in some situations. So let me know what you guys think about him in the comment section below. Make sure, oh, and also we've got some more voice lines and pins for him, so stick around for that. Thanks for watching. Use code Kairos in the Brawl Stars shop.
The grind don't stop. Carry on the salt legacy. Hold my salt. Where is the love? Try passive aggression next time, please. Didn't we almost have it all? Hashtag learnings. Hashtag, oh my god, hashtag pain. Share, like, and subscribe. I'm only joking. Jeez. Oh, you're so big and strong. Oh, hope that made you feel better. You are worse than Mandy. Oh, so much anger. Stop the hate. Appreciate. Ripperoni. You want salt with that? You got hurted. Oh, the poor baby. Please leave a review. Another satisfied customer. Kind regards. Best wishes. Doing it for the lulz. Best clown in town. Keep your friends close and your enemies laughing. Thank you all for making me look good. I love that. I'm YouTube famous. Mom, I'm on TV. Time for a pay rise. Hey, Mandy, are you watching this? I might be a joker, but I'm nobody's fool. Let's run around and do random things! Go team! Teamwork for the win! Yeah, you go first. Teamwork makes the dream work! The best brawlers make the best teams. Synergy is the key to victory. I've heard that somewhere. To brawl or not to brawl? Was that a question? Watch me as I move in a direction. Run, brawl, explode. Hashtag life goals. Let's skedaddle. It's time for battle. You have a strategy. Aw, aren't you special? Follow my lead. Suckers. All aboard the pain train. Woo-woo! Surprise! What will it be? Don't look! Spoiler alert! Big reveal! Pleasure or pain? Ta-da!